Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Mental Toughness and Body Show, the place where we talk all things high performance, whether it's in business, in health, and in life. And today I'm joined with by a truly fascinating guest, Katrina Wyziakowski, also known as Lady O, Australia's Orgasm Lady. Now, Katrina is an expert in helping people break through their personal limits, whether it's in their relationship, their mindset, or overall fulfillment in life. So we are going to get into a very intimate conversation right now. So children under 18, maybe you could switch off, and parents later, you can determine whether this is a podcast you would like them to listen to. So we are going to touch on that in a second, but Katrina, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you so much for having me.
So I guess my first question has to be, why this? I mean, we know that sex sells, and sex is something that is a very important part of health, your sexual health, and orgasms is obviously a part of that. And I can see why you would be attracted to this, but what has driven you to help people work with this side of their life?
Well, to be fair, Rob, I never wanted to be the orgasm lady. I was certainly quite happy to keep private things private and keep my business separate, but it just became apparent to me that it was a conversation that needed having. Around the time that 50 Shades of Grey came out, I was in a money boot camp, and it was the scientific evidence that the more money you make and the more orgasms you have, there's a real link to that, because it is that unleashing of abundance and creativity, and it's the superpower of women, but not only women. Men can have multiple orgasms as well. And I have a degree in exercise science, so I was always fascinated with the body. And in the same time, we were talking in a women's business sort of mentorship, I suppose, with about 8 to 10 of us, just talking about the fact of why don't we have sex more often as women, who men are fascinated by this, that women can have sex almost whenever they want. And men don't seem to have that. It's a little bit harder for men sometimes, particularly in the dating stages, whereas women don't understand how men can have sex without the emotional. So this is the difference between the sexes, which I've spoken about publicly. And it just was apparent to me that we're not having these conversations. And when women have access to sex, even if it's a partner who they live with and are married to, is they're right in the bed, but they'll just forego that pleasure or that stress release or that all the good things that come with sex and orgasm because they take it for granted. So I just thought, well, why don't we? So we actually amongst us entered a challenge of an orgasm a day for 30 days, so having 30 in a month. And it was just mind-blowing to everybody there. And in the money boot camp, a lady was saying that her boyfriend had said she wasn't finished, or the sex wasn't finished until she had 3 orgasms. And the comments on that thread went absolutely ballistic. It was just three, 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 three. And everyone was talking about multiple orgasm. And I ascertained by that 3 was a big deal for a lot of women, and a lot of women were not having multiple orgasms at that time. So all these things sort of just appeared, and I just, by default, I guess, became the person when I was talking about it, and people were fascinated. And everywhere I go, and it would come up, and people feel very comfortable talking to me. And when they would share their stories of where it wasn't happening or sex was not so fulfilling, I gave them a safe place to speak about it.
That's a really important point there about a safe place, because I think there's a lot of issues around this. What's your perspective on why there aren't more conversations around it?
Well, initially, yeah, we've come through, the world has changed so rapidly in the past 30, 40 years, I suppose. It was very taboo. It was something that's not talked about. We've got women who are alive today who did not know what sex was up until the night of their wedding. We've got people that orgasm and pleasure side was just never even on the table for women. It was procreation or no procreation. It was education based on how to not get an STD or STI. It was conversation on how to get pregnant or not get pregnant. And that was the end of the conversation. And for women of a certain era, which is, let's just say for argument's sake, 50 or 60 plus, who are still alive today, nobody ever said to them that sex was for their pleasure. And certainly the body is made to have pleasure. And men, let's be general, do get a lot of pleasure out of any sort of sexual activity in most cases. Women, it's not always a given that the pleasure is there.
Yeah, it's interesting. So let's cut to it. What are the the main, like, you do work with men as well, but most of your work is with women, right?
Yes.
So what
The men's
are,
stuff is growing actually rapidly, my male clientele. Yeah.
yeah, okay. So let's help all the stupid men out there and give them a bit of a helping hand, so to speak. What are the main reasons that you find that women don't orgasm? And then I will provide a man's perspective that is absolutely got no science to it.
Well, I would never call anyone stupid for not knowing. I had someone that literally told me, again, in this era of not knowing about sex before marriage, didn't know while she was pregnant, did not know how the baby was going to come out. And she called herself stupid. I said, you're not stupid if nobody ever told you that. So I'll give all the men a free pass that you don't know what you don't know. And I'm the same. I don't know everything about men. I do know a lot about men, but not everything. So I think for what men need to understand is that for women, it's not just ready to go at any stage. Our hormones have a lot to do with, let's say, the libido and the level of desire for sex. It can fluctuate quite a bit over a month, over a week, and over lifetime. Particularly, we've got from puberty and then that 18 to 20, where biologically and traditionally, and say cavemen people, that was when they were in their right for reproduction. We're not doing that now as a society. We're certainly delaying that. And so then you've got the 30s, and they say women are reaching their sexual peak in their 40s, where they're just randy, ready to go, high libido in most cases. And then menopause and perimenopause, where it can just plummet. So because men have a lot more steady libido, sex drive, and hormonal fluctuation, women have a very high one. So women need an emotional connection. So you need to be able to have that conversation. And as I say, it starts up here before it ends down there, because women don't want to be used or abused, and there's a slut factor and a shaming factor. Whereas a lot of women still hold on to that belief that if they like sex or enjoy sex or go after sex, it means something about them, and that's usually a negative connotation. So it's a lot about a conversation. It's a lot about understanding that it takes time in the bedroom, at least 20 minutes, to warm up a woman before she's physically ready for sex and pleasure, or the height of pleasure. Whereas for a man, that could only be, a matter of seconds or minutes. And so that's very different. And it takes a lot of time and patience. And then to get to know someone, to really amp up and have an amazing sexual connection with someone, it takes time and it takes practice and it takes getting to know each other's bodies, men and women.
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? I mean, I'm happily single. I've been in relationships before. I was married for 20 years. But yeah, I think the most challenging part is to have a conversation when you are the most vulnerable, and that is when you've got no clothes on, which is probably not the time to be having the conversation.
Yeah, let's
But
have conversations a little bit before that. But
yeah, that's right. Yeah,
yeah.
but there is, from a man's perspective, I realize I've probably got more feminine energy than masculine energy to some extent. So maybe I'm more in tune with some of these things. But a lot, like I personally, I could never have a one night stand because there is no connection, and I would just need that. For me, it's even deeper than that. It's like I need to be in love
Yeah.
in order to be able to do that. So with that comes a lot of, like I want a best mate first, like how can you become really, really good friends? And
Yeah.
then I think it comes from, well, a place of I absolutely want to make this person feel the most beautiful, incredible person on the planet so that they feel safe and so forth. But then over time, I think and it's only through the passing of time, and sometimes I think it's years, which is what I think is really quite beautiful about a long-term relationship. I think it should get better and better.
Yes.
And when you can get to that place where you can say, you can ask for absolutely anything it is that you want. Now, let's take off illegal things and immoral things and things like that off the table. But, if you're in that safe place where you can ask for absolutely anything and know that you will not be judged, then that's when I think you've really, really made it. And you should be able to receive that as well, as long as you're both consenting and it's okay. And if you're like, okay, you try it once and you like it and say, okay, well, let's put it into the repertoire. If you don't, okay, let's take it off the table.
And yeah.
maybe I'm revealing too much of myself right now and I need to disappear.
Not at all, because we've got to be brave, right? We've got to do something that's
Yeah.
really brave each time. And, that time you were probably there in the room. I don't know if you were in May last year when I, stood up in front of the people in Melbourne. And it's the first time I had publicly said I help people with multiple orgasm at the JT Fox event. I'd never said that publicly before. I'd only been helping people privately at that point. And you hit the nail on the head. It's the naked and vulnerable. And this is absolutely my couple goals for all of us, that you can stand before someone absolutely naked, absolutely vulnerable, because not only do we have our desires that sometimes we're afraid to voice, but we've got some shame and guilt most people have over their past, over something they've done or some way they've treated someone when they weren't exactly at their best, let's say. But no one is perfect. And I think that this is the problem, because for a woman, she needs to feel safe physically. Look, let's just be real. I mean, you're in the fitness industry. I was a personal trainer too. Generally speaking, once again, most women know that most men could overpower them physically if they wanted to. And so for a woman to be in that state of a bedroom where she is naked and vulnerable, for one, is knowing that he could physically overpower her if he should choose to. And so for her, it's a physical safety is probably the number one priority. Not to mention, if she gets pregnant, that's largely something that will affect her life a lot more than it would affect his life. Whereas for a man, I feel like he wants safety too, but he wants that emotional safety and that emotional place to feel safe, because he knows that a woman could really F up his life if she wanted to. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like there's that whole gamble that we're playing with. And, I agree with you. I don't think that one night stands or ways in which society portrays sex are very healthy for us long term. And I think that there's a lot to be said for putting in more of an effort and creating something a bit more long term. Again, for both of you, becomes your safe place to fall.
I know we're talking about multiple orgasms here. We spoke about it as we caught up for lunch on, I don't know, what was it, Sunday?
Sunday.
And for me, multiple orgasms, it's going to sound counterintuitive, but multiple orgasms has nothing to do with the orgasm. It's everything that leads up to those moments, and then the relationship that you have to enable you to have multiple orgasms. If that, do you see where I'm coming from?
In a way, but it is a little bit multifaceted, because there's a physical side, which is knowing what to do, where physically, what to touch, how to touch, pressure, timing. There's almost a sequence of events that can be, acted out in order to make it happen. But for women, before all the physical of what goes where and touch becomes a mindset again and a permission. And I think a lot of the reason, getting back to a previous question of why women are not having multiple orgasm and men are not having multiple orgasm, or it's not happening as frequently, is three things. It's either actually not knowing physically what to do and how to do it, is also not having permission in order to say, oh, I'm allowed to do that, or not knowing what's possible. Because multiple orgasm for men is not, most, even on TV, it's like, oh, one and done, give me 30 minutes, whereas there are practices where it can be done. And a lot of it is to do with, a lot of mindset, breath work, and physically knowing what to do, because you can't just say to someone, go and have multiple orgasm if they don't know how.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess the other tricky part these days is life is so busy. Everybody feels beaten down by the pressures of both people working, the pressures of kids, financial pressure, the stress at work, looking after themselves, and they get to the end of the day, they're feeling bloated or whatever, and it's like, seriously, after the day, you really want to have sex? Like, what is going on? So perhaps what are some of your tips to help people? Because life is just really hectic. And you said there, like, one orgasm a day for 30 days. There'd be some people out there thinking, you got to be joking. Whereas other people might be thinking, what, just 30? So what are some tips you can give people to help, I suppose, not feel like they're failing because they're not having one a day, or they're not having, one a week or something like that?
Yeah. Look, I think it comes down to remembering the good side. So it is absolutely stress relief. The more orgasms you have, the more money you'll make. So that could be financial relief. And that is also a mindset and setting an intention too. there is that deeper connection with another human, which, as we learn in lockdown, Rob, there is no comparison for that. Skin to skin human touch is good for all of us in a safe, consenting space. There is dropping the stress hormones, which is good for the nervous system. There is getting the heart rate going, blood flow. For a woman, when she has an orgasm, she glows for days. So there is that. Then it opens up a portal to creativity and abundance. And something that may have been on her mind is a problem. The solution can fall into her lap after an orgasm. So we have not even as a society scratched the surface of what is possible here. So I think for couples, it's really important to remember all of the good sides. And as I said, this work came from when the question, why don't women have orgasm, was actually a conversation with a friend of mine who, with her partner hadn't had sex in a while, and she just had sex. She's like, God, that was good. She's like, why? She goes, I said to him, why don't we do that more often? And I'm like, why don't we do that more often? We take it for granted. And I mean, this week we've got Valentine's Day coming up, and I do often say to women, I said, if you've got a good man who works hard, loves you, comes home to you every night, and, he's not perfect and might say and do some silly things at times, but essentially a good man, I'm like, throw him a bone, have sex with him. It's such a bonding thing, and it drops all the defenses. And then that is how a couple can connect even deeper. And just one sexual act, and then all of a sudden, he'll help with a chore or something, and she'll be kind to him and make him a cup of tea, and then he'll say have a nice day and send her a nice message, and it just brings that relationship back to little steps that each of you take to build intimacy, and that again builds safety, and that again builds more likely to have more sex, more fun, all the good things all happening again, and less financial stress and less nervous system damage. There's virtually no downside.
So let's talk to the people like me, the single person. How, but because I think there is, I think there's still a societal issue that there's something like, I get this from clients all the time, like the judgment, like, what's wrong with you? Because you should be in a relationship. So therefore there is something wrong with you, because you can't be happy in a relationship.
As a single person.
Sorry, being single, not being in a relationship. Which obviously, we know is not true. So I'm very, very happy the way that I am. But there's also a lot of pressure on, how you satisfy that part of you, because you can't have a cuddle with someone.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can still, have your yourself orgasms and all that kind of stuff. But I think there's still I guess maybe it's getting better, but the perception that is, I don't know, dirty, not right, whatever, because nobody, like I grew up in I was born in 68. So I never had any conversations about sex with my parents. Like it was never, that father-son night. I don't know what happened, but I didn't have it.
You didn't get the memo? You didn't get the information?
Was I sick on that day? But I never had that. So I had no clues. Right. I didn't have my first girlfriend until I was 23, and I didn't even know how to kiss. So never mind all the other complexities.
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about that, and what's your perspective in making it okay for men and women to be having multiple orgasms by themselves.
Yeah. So I think the perception of a relationship is better than single is completely false, because there are millions of people who will even be watching this and in Australia who are living miserably in a relationship.
Yeah,
and you cut the cake 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. Great. How effective is your relationship? How happy are you? And the fact of sexless marriages is through the roof at the moment. We've got domestic violence, unfortunately. We've got people who are staying together for the kids, which is the biggest BS ever, because you're not helping those kids at all. And you've got people that are lying to themselves. So, I would take single life over that any day of the week, every day of the week. And single life has its place in time. And some people choose that perpetually for their entire life, which is fine. I think it comes back to building a life that you love, and a life that you love and thrive in is the most important thing. And that goes for people in a relationship or single, because building a life, as I say, it's like you're in a tower with a high-rise building. If you're hanging out in the basement, all you're ever going to do is meet people in the basement and have opportunities that are available in the basement. If you're going to elevate your life and let's go to level 3, you're going to meet other people on level 3. People say, oh, there's no good men around, or there's no good women around. Well, start with elevating your life. Can you get better at your career? Sort out your money, sort out your health, as you know, with personal training and fitness, get a trainer, a little bit of, personal grooming doesn't go astray. And up leveling, then it's like, oh, now I'm on level 10. I'm going to meet other people on level 10. So, which is a mindset which you and I know are both very, very involved in bettering our lives every day. You want to be stronger, faster, more efficient, more personal growth mindset makes you that happier in your own life. And then if the person comes or doesn't come to date you or be with you, it doesn't matter because you're still in a life that you love. So I think, being in a terrible relationship would be at the bottom of my to-do list and my pile and my choice for anyone. Then being single is a choice that people are making, but it's what you do in that time. And some people then would like to go and start dating and being in a relationship. So I think, and masturbation and being single and having orgasms on your own falls into this category. There's nothing wrong with it because you're still going to get the benefits. Now, it's not as good as it would be with a partner, but it's better than it would be with a detrimental partner or someone who's not safe. So you see what I'm saying? It's sometimes in life that we're making choices and choosing the best out of a bad situation because it's still good for the body to have that release. It's stress relief. It's still having most of the benefits. But then we're looking at ideal would be with a loving, trusting partner that you can be vulnerable with if that's something you want. And I do tend to find in my work that people that say they don't want a partner or don't ever want to have a partner again, often there's a lot of trauma there. And I would rather them deal with that trauma. And it doesn't matter if you don't want a partner because single life has benefits too. So if the choice is being made from an awareness and this is what's best for my life because of my work, my travel, or my other things going on, then great. But if you're only choosing that out of fear or because of trauma, I'd rather you deal with the trauma.
Yeah, absolutely. I like what you said there about continuous improvement. I think if you have that mindset, then you'll just be a better person and you'll have more success, et cetera, and therefore you'll have more confidence. Your self-image will be better, and therefore you're going to be better in the bedroom as well.
Yeah.
I have this thing that I often tell clients when I first meet them. This is going to sound wrong how that just came out, but I talk about what drives me, and it's about looking good naked. And
Yeah.
it, in some ways, doesn't have anything to do with looking good naked. But if I look good naked, it means that I've done the work. It means I'm training, I'm doing my cardio, I'm eating well, I'm supplementing well. I know that my business is growing well, I'm sleeping well, I'm growing all the time. All of those things, which ultimately mean that they're showing up in the physical me that is present. Because I often, when I'm working with people, when I do a consultation with them, it often ends up in tears because I get to understand. So what is it that you really want and why is that important? And I've worked with so many women that have just lost their sense of self and say that they don't get undressed in they turn the lights off. They get undressed in the dark and dressed in the dark. They're not comfortable with their partner touching them, or their partner has stopped touching them. They're not intimate with them anymore. And my heart really goes out to them because I can understand how hurtful that that can be. For me, a lot of this comes back to you can improve your self-confidence and your own self-image. It doesn't mean that you have to be the hottest person on the planet, but if you're continually working on yourself and you're feeling good about yourself, then ultimately that's going to lead to the a better performance and happiness in the bedroom, as opposed to you could be having multiple orgasms, but if your partner is shaming you or making you feel not right, then that doesn't really help.
No, it doesn't. And it's like what you were saying before about happily single. Happily is the key. And the thing is that there's no better or worse because all the things that are great about being single suck when you're married and in a relationship because you don't have that freedom. You can't just go over to win. But all the things that suck about a marriage, like, it's like, oh, I'm tied to this person. I have to make every decision, when you're single, there's no better or worse. It's just what it is at that time of your life. But my point is, if you are unhappy where you are, whether that's unhappily single or unhappily married, let's do something about it. And that's really where I work with people.
So let's just say that people have listened to this and they're like, yeah, I can really resonate with it. It's not where I want it to be. We'll talk about in the end how people can work with you. But How do you initiate that conversation with your partner? And I'm tipping that the time not to do it is in the bedroom, but how do you initiate that conversation, whether it's from the man or from the woman, or that could be same-sex partners, whatever?
Yeah.
What's your tips on initiating that so you're not shaming somebody, blaming, etc.?
Yeah, and I get asked this a lot because this is actually huge. I've got people that have, not shared a secret with their partner for decades. And it breaks my heart a little bit, Rob, I have to say, because I found for me, those conversations in my life that were the hardest to have and I stewed over so much. It's between here is like, I need to say it, and between here is actually saying it. All the drama and grief lies in the middle. It's in your head. You get in a story about what it means, what they're going to say, what's going to happen, then this will happen and this will happen, and we doomsday and we disasterize the whole thing. Being brave, there's not enough to be said for it. Sometimes you just have to open up your mouth. It may be a case where you need a friend or a family member with you. It may be a case where you write it all out first. I recommend to people who have to have a tough conversation, and if that conversation is, my needs are not being met sexually in this relationship, from a woman to say that to a man, it can be taken as very defensive and the ego comes up. But also for a man to say, woman, if a man's said to his wife of 10, 20 years, you've put on weight, you've let yourself go, which she very well may have, there are certain ways that he says that she's just going to deflate and just lose all hope or get very angry and defensive again. So these, and we do need to be respectful and tactful the way we bring these up. But I just think the alternative is, if there was something about your partner that you didn't know, would you really want them not to tell you? I mean, I'm always like, my kids and my partner, I've always wanted that respect and that level of just tell me, because once we know what we're dealing with and everything's on the table, we can deal with it. You can't deal with it if you don't know what you're dealing with. You're like fighting with a blindfold on, fighting with a sword with a blindfold on is, you're not going to achieve anything. So I would suggest to people to just set a timer for 15 minutes and write down first everything that's on your mind, because the subconscious stream of consciousness, journaling, is a really good way to get that out. For women, we talk, we're just village people. We have mothers and aunts and our village and our best friends, and we love to talk this thing out. And often talking in confidence with a trusted friend can get to the bottom of it. And, 9 times out of 10, our friend would say to us, you need to talk to him about it. Whereas men don't have that same thing. It will be on their mind and they'll stew over it, and they'll be terrified to tell their partner what their issue is because of being judged or shamed or guilted, and often they won't talk to their mates. So if it's that bad that you do need to have a conversation, a really hard conversation, don't know how, I do offer a 30-minute consult. So I'm really happy for you to talk to me about it, and I can advise personally. But I do also tell people ways to start the conversation with their partner to drop the other person's defense. And one of those ways is to just say, hey, like when I was in LA with you and we spoke, and I spoke on stage, and I talked about the difference between the messaging between what boys get about their penis and what girls get about the vagina. And boys tend to love their penis. Men love their penis. They think it's the greatest thing in the world. And that's even from little boys, and dad's like, that's my boy and that's my thing. Women don't tend to love their vagina. They get told that sex is bad, dirty, or wrong. Shut your legs. Don't let anyone see it. Don't let anyone touch you, or that it's smelly even, and that's a problem. Women are not telling their daughters, you are so lucky to have a vagina. We are so lucky to be the vagina people. That's what we say, and how great it is that you're a woman. And I'm so happy that you're a girl. And, wanting a girl to put her in pink frilly dresses or have the matching pink blue set is not the reason to, want a girl. There are so many wonderful things about being a woman, and we just don't talk about them enough. So I advised someone who approached me after that speech. He was telling me about some problem with his wife, and I said, maybe you could just say, hey, today I heard a speaker who was talking about messaging that girls received about their vagina. What was it like for you when you were growing up? I'm really curious to know. What did your mother tell you about sex, or what do you think about that? Because it really made me think that there's probably something that you haven't shared with me. So coming to your partner, asking them to share something about how they're feeling can really help to break the ice too.
Yeah, I like that. I do like that. So I guess we've never lived in an age where, unfortunately, pornography is more available than it's ever been before. And that, I really feel for children, because once something is seen, you cannot unseen it, and it could just negatively impact their trajectory in their sexual life for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
What is the role that you think that it can have in a positive way in sexual health, but also because like a lot of these things, they can be addictive. How do we, I suppose, put in boundaries and that kind of stuff, particularly if you're in a, you know, a loving relationship where partners on either side can, well, I guess it's more so going to be men, but on both sides can feel threatened by the fact that, well, why do you need that if you've got me, kind of thing. So interested in your perspective.
Yeah, so looking for the positive side of pornography, I really think it has opened up a lot of conversations and a lot of increasing what we understand is physically possible for a human body. Now, we do know that they are actors and we do know that it's manufactured, but even the multiple orgasm thing, it wasn't even discussed, you know, recent, even it was, as I said, sex was just for procreation. That's like, oh, the orgasm thing, which happened in the 20s, as I don't know if you may or may not know the story, but women were treated for hysteria and doctors were manually giving women orgasms and they were lining up out the door to be treated for hysteria because it felt so good. And that's how the vibrator was invented, because this poor doctor would go home exhausted after giving all the happy endings to all his patients. And then it was like, oh, well, you can take this and you can do it yourself. And it's like, oh, and then obviously that would have never been advertised, but word of mouth for women is a very powerful form of marketing. Yeah. And so, you know, by showing these things, we can, you know, for healthy couples, it could be, oh, I saw this, or I want to try this, or my mate said this. You know, if you're both in a really loving, supportive, playful area, it's like, let's try something new. That can be a really good thing. As far as the negative side of it, I think that males' first introduction to sex is most often through pornography. And what they're seeing again is, you and I as adults know that it's manufactured. We know that those body sizes and penis size, or, you know, even the way the vagina and vulva is depicted and breasts is not typical of average women or average men. So it sets in our mind already an expectation of how sex is going to be long before they're having sex, and they've seen a lot of it by then. And there was a culture of teenage boys coaching the teenage girls on how to perform these sexual acts that are probably well beyond their level, because and also they're seeing like the BDSM, which is the very rough sex or angry sex or tie-up sex, which has its place in consenting adult relationships. I don't think it belongs in teenage first relationships, because that's something that can come later, again, with both people consenting. It's nothing that anyone should be forced into doing. And then there's a whole level of trauma and how far that goes and how consenting people are to that. And as for by the same token, I think that the Disney princesses and the rom-com comedies have set women up for failure in relationships, because we're waiting for the man to climb the Sydney Harbour Bridge and declare his undying love for us. And we're like, well, if he doesn't do that, he doesn't love me. And there are, you know, majority of men who are really decent, lovely guys, they're not going to do that because it's not normal. But we've seen it in a movie, the Empire State Building. He's like, he's going to meet me. Or if a guy breaks up with you, you're waiting for him to turn around and say, no, sorry, I was wrong, I still love you. And it just doesn't happen in real life in that same way. So I think we have to have a healthy dose of realism and get our information from really accurate sources.
And so when it comes to, so we've been talking about multiple orgasms. So I read a statistic that something like 50% of women normally do not orgasm during intercourse. I don't know whether you've got better data than that, but that's what my AI girlfriend told me. In terms of maybe people listening to this and say, look, I've just never had an orgasm before. In order to, I mean, like you're saying, it could be technique, it could be a whole range of things. From talking to the women that I work with, not again, this just sounds really wrong how this is coming out. Like
I'm trying, how many orgasms you had this week?
And we're talking about orgasms and stuff, but the stuff that comes out in these sessions is just you know, a little bit mind blowing. Where they, like, it seems to be how their own self-esteem and what they're being self-conscious or whatever it is, what's the other person thinking, or they've said something and during the you know, the act and so forth. How do we help the people that are, apart from reaching out for consultation with you, what's the way to help women that have never orgasmed to reach their pinnacle of ecstasy?
Well, I'm so glad you asked. But just on statistics, I wanted to mention one that will help people get this framed correctly. Is that recently there was a study that showed that estrogen has an effect on women where we think we are less attractive than we actually are. We see ourselves as less attractive and less capable and less powerful than we are, whereas testosterone has the opposite effect, and men think they are more powerful and more sexy and more have greater abilities than what they do. And you can see now, knowing that, how that may play out in a bedroom scenario,
Yeah.
where men may think they are pleasing a woman and may not be. And I did ask
Yeah.
a man in a free consult. I said, so just so we're clear, the last time you had sex with her, did she orgasm? And he looked at me and goes, well, I
Of course you do.
don't know. And I'm like, well, if you don't know, we have a problem, because you
Yeah,
should
yeah.
know.
You would know.
Yeah, well, people who know, it's like, if you know, you know, right? And if you
Yeah.
don't know, I'm guessing it's a no. And as for women, it's like, oh, how will I know? Like, you will know. So if you don't know, let's just go with it's a no. So women are very, like you said before, scared to take off their clothes, all lights off. You know, correct me if I'm wrong, but men don't care. If you got a naked woman in front of you and you're going to have
Yeah, that's what I say to my female clients. I say that, do you know, your
pretty
man's
damn happy.
stupid. He really doesn't care what you look like.
He's pretty damn happy and he's won the lotto.
Yeah, that's right.
So let's get it out of your mind about what you look like and get back into what what you're there for. So I think there is a myth that some women cannot orgasm. That is completely untrue. Everybody can, every woman can, every man can. If there is a medical or physiological thing, then obviously see your doctor. But if that was me or my client, I would absolutely go to every other lengths, because the body is a map of erogenous zones. There are, certain areas. You remember that Friends episode when Monica was teaching Chandler, she's like seven, like the 7 points, just for starters. But every person has their own erogenous zones of pleasure points. So even if there was a problem actually with the genitalia, there is a whole rest of your body where you can feel pleasure, love, acceptance, and there are different kinds of orgasms. So I think is, first of all, the mindset, like I said initially, is not knowing what's possible. It's possible. There is like 7 orgasms that everybody can just have. That, let's just list them all. We're talking about, G-spot orgasm, vaginal orgasm, cervical orgasm, whole body orgasm, anal orgasm, nipple orgasm, and I missed one.
Got to be something in there to do with the mind orgasm.
Clitoral. I forgot the clitoral. That's the one that everybody starts with and thinks is the only one. How could I forget that one? Yeah. So, that's just for starters. So these points are on different points of the body. So it is absolutely possible. And it may start with knowledge of not knowing how to stimulate that part. And then it could be permission that we're not quite sure, or we're scared. And it's okay to be scared. It's like anything. And sex is really a learning process, through our entire adult lives.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say, because like I was 23, never kissed anyone. It's like, and that sounds so stupid. I had absolutely no idea. And trust me, it was horrible and so awkward. And it's like, I had to actually say to her, I said, look, I've never kissed anyone. Can you show me what it's supposed to be like? And
God bless you, Rob, for asking, can you show me? Because I got to say, kissing's also one area where, people need to
yeah,
know.
well, that's such an important part, isn't it, in this? But so my approach then is, because I'm always about continuous improvement. How do you just get better at all of these things? And I think that for me is like a really exciting part of a relationship, because you don't know. So it's like, well, you don't know all the answers. You don't know how your life's what's going to happen beyond this interview, for instance. I don't know how my day's going to go. I know the things that I have to do. Probably nothing to do with an orgasm, but you never know.
Hey, come on.
It's only lunchtime.
Exactly.
But it's about getting to know your partner and going on like a roadmap, really, isn't it? And saying, okay, and getting that open communication to say, well, what do you like? Do you like this? Is that?
And not only that, Rob, is getting to know yourself, because if you are single or are by yourself, or even people who are married but their partner's away a lot, is knowing what feels good on your body. And running a bath and having a little explore, there's a lot to be said for that. And you're by yourself, and see, people are even ashamed of that. It's like, it's your body. And I know that there's a lot of cultural and religious shame too, but I refuse to believe in a God that invented a brain to think, lungs to inflate air, a heart to pump, skin to feel, but only invented the clitoris for, well, then nothing if it's not for pleasure.
Yeah, that's right. It serves no
Or
purpose.
like only the penis and the vagina only to make babies. That doesn't make sense in any realm for me. So I think it is part of a body which is normal and healthy and safe, and it's your body, which means you're allowed to touch it. And I thought too, with this whole messaging on girls, it's like even in the shower, what are we saying to ourselves? Washing our body, are we, grateful for our body? I know you are, because you work in that industry of personal training and fitness and health, but being grateful for our legs and our belly and our brain and our hair and our vulva and vagina or penis for a man is like, actually send it some love instead of just ignoring it. And no one ever thinks of this, but I'm telling people it's a part of your body. It's like that IKEA experiment that I did speak on stage about. They had the two plants, and one they spoke lovingly to and complimented and spoke nice to and took care of it. The other plant they bullied, and they yelled messages into this plant and said, "You're ugly, you're stupid, you're terrible." And they did this experiment in an IKEA, and that plant shriveled and died. And this is just a plant with just words. So the energy and the words that we say and think are so powerful. So I thought about that plan. I thought, well, what would be the difference between a woman who has never thought of her vagina in a nice way or said a nice word to her body in her entire life versus someone that is washing and drying this part of her body and saying, I'm so grateful that I have a vagina and a vulva, and I'm so grateful for my sexual health, and I'm so grateful that I was put on this earth as a woman, and I'm so grateful that I have the power to have multiple orgasms and reach the power and abundance and creativity and make more money. Show me a downside.
Yeah, absolutely. So we should be clear about how you work with clients, and you are not in the bedroom or in the room when people are having multiple orgasms. You're just working with the mindset, right? You're not doing it. If people are thinking, oh, wow, I'm about to get an orgasm or multiple ones from Katrina, only in a mindset and mechanical sense, but not
There is
you
a separation.
hands in pockets and arms crossed and like, no, don't go there.
Having said that, Rob, you'll believe this because you do know me, but recently I was a guest at people's homes, and they both had the most amazing sex, and they were like, the women were like, oh my god, Katrina will be so proud, and the guys were just like, well, you're not going to tell her. And they're like, yeah, we are. So just my presence around will transfer to you having better sex in the bedroom. So let's just have a conversation. And this is what's happening lately. Energy is a very powerful thing.
So I'm going to put these links below the podcast here, but what is the way that people can get in touch with you so that they can start ecstasy journey right now?
Having more fun. Yeah, so Facebook or Instagram, I'm really happy for you to message me. I am on TikTok, LinkedIn, all of the things, but Instagram's probably the best one right now. And I do have a 30-minute consult, which is completely free and obligation. If you have a specific question that may take a bit of a while and give you a sore thumb if you have to type out every word, I'm really happy to talk about it. I'm giving you that safe space. It's entirely confidential. And people who work with me, I've got people that work with me for a year or just 5 weeks or whatever it is. And I do have free groups on Facebook and a lot of resources, and I can answer a lot of questions. And if I can't, I'll be really honest about it and say, maybe you do need someone to come into your bedroom, that I won't be that person.
And is it just your name?
Yes, Katrina
Yes.
Vyshkovsky, and
Okay.
Living the Life You Deserve on Instagram with all the little underscores, which is very annoying, but yeah, Rob,
Okay.
tag it.
All right. Terrific. So this has been a really fascinating, fantastic conversation. It's our sexual health is something that I think people are embarrassed to have more conversations about, but I think they are certainly the conversations if you want to certainly reach the pinnacles of your relationship, then this is absolutely a fundamental part of it. And you do need to have the courage to speak up, and so that you do get what it is that you want in the relationship, in that, in a safe place to fall and all that kind of stuff as well. So I want to thank you for today, Katrina. I'm going to give you the final word. I always like to ask my guests, what's the best advice you've ever received? It could be bedroom advice or any advice for success in general, but I'll give you the final word.
I have to say, an orgasm a day keeps the doctor away.
Is that your saying?
I was going to name that my book actually, but then I was worried I'd get sued by some medical person. I thought, well, the publicity probably wouldn't be bad, but I actually don't want to be sued. So I have changed the title of the book, which will be coming out really soon. So you're going to have to follow me to be, and I'm sure, Rob, you'll be all over that when it comes, and, sell a few copies in the gym for me because, as I said, there is virtually no downside and makes a lot of people happy. I reckon I could cure road rage. If everyone was having a lot more orgasms, I reckon road rage would be obliterated.
Nicely done. Well, thanks so much for being on the show today, Katrina.
Thanks for having me, Rob. I really appreciate it.